All right, welcome in everybody. This is episode number 1 of our football podcast. We'll try to do the same thing as basketball, excuse me. Get one, maybe not every week, but we'll probably hopefully do 4 to 5 of these throughout the year. And this one, we're just going to go over the teams. We're going to throw our conference predictions. I'm being joined by Drew Skyberg from Valders here today. Glad to have you on, Drew. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Robert. I'm doing great. I'm really looking forward to record these football and basketball episodes with you because I'm really looking forward to the EWC for football and basketball this year especially. So it's great to be on.
Yeah, it is. It's great to be back. It's great to have a normal year of football. We're going to have a good show for you today. We're going to go over obviously, like I said, our projected conference standings. We both talked before this. We actually are in agreement in the 8 teams, surprisingly. So it should be a relatively agreeable show, and we're going to bring you some great things to look for this year. And then after that, we're going to quickly go over our top players to look for. I have our top 10, 11 guys, I think, in the conference. We're going to go over them and who to look for on the field this year. And then we're going to just give a quick preview of each game. The non-conference games this week is we're already into the season. We're 2 days away from football. So On that note, we can go ahead and jump right into our projected finishing here if you don't have anything else you want to say.
No, you got it all. Let's get into these projections. And like you said, we surprisingly agreed on all these.
Yeah, I do have the WS, all these, the rankings for the original conference I looked at were on WSN and they're not the same. So we will also, Travis Wilson's WSN rankings, we will also give you those as we're going over the teams, just to give you some, comparison as what Travis Wilson thinks. But just keep in mind, he has to do every conference in the state. So some of these may not be, he's just going over these very vague. So first, we'll start out with it. Obviously, this one was probably the easiest to put down for me. It's KLC number 1. I don't think it's very close. One word I have down is just explosive, experienced, speed, athleticism. They have the best offense. They have probably the top, I'd say at least top 3 players in the conference playing on their team with Robbie Michael, Colin Gerdakis, and Casey Verhagen. Robbie Michael, just a freak of an athlete. He's ranked 10th quarterback in the state by Travis Wilson, and Colin Gerdakis, I know, is ranked as a wide receiver also. And when you got a guy like Robbie Michael, who is the defending player of the year in the conference, 2,300 passing yards, 31 passing touchdowns, 9 rushing scores, and 560 rushing yards last year, and he runs a 4.5 40. That's just really impressive. I'm guessing you're just you think the same way about this offense and this team. Anything else you see from KLC?
Yeah, I think one thing, you mentioned Colin Gerdakis, of course. I think what they do, how they utilize him, I think is so valuable to that team. They run a wide receiver screen with him, and I know it killed Valders last year. It killed a lot of teams in the conference, and I think that's their bread and butter. I think when Robbie Michael can get out and run, like you mentioned, a 4.5 40, I think this team, explosive is a great way to describe it, and I think they're going to average north of 40 points this year, maybe close to 50.
Yeah, I totally agree. We were talking before the show, and I said to you, if they hold their opponents under 50 points a game, they will win every game. That's all they really have to do. And obviously their defense is shaky. In the one game I saw them, they did not have Robbie Michael, obviously. Sorry, I actually watched them 2 games. I saw the Brilliant and the TR game. But in the Brilliant game, they obviously didn't have Robbie Michael, so it's very hard to go by that. But it was all Brilliant scoring. Brilliant probably could have scored 60, 70 points if they had their starters out all game. So that will be a concern of theirs. If they can just make just enough plays. Like I was watching the Two Rivers game. I believe Robbie Michael had 2 second-half interceptions. That's really all it took. The first team not to score, because they're going to score every drive. They're starters. A lot of the games in the conference. They're just so dynamic, so athletic, and you got guys like Casey Verhagen, who's just overlooked. He had 31 catches for 553 yards and 8 scores last year. And those numbers don't do justice of how just shifty and how good of a route runner he is. He's all around the field, and he really surprised me, his defense last year too. He blew up a lot of plays. He's really fast to the ball. And just Matt Stefani also, just another really good. He had 5 yards per carry last year. And just with this team, like I said, as long as they keep their opponents under 50 points, you're looking at probably the conference champions.
Exactly. And I think you mentioned the defense as well. I think what really hurt them last year, like they weren't an aggressive team defensively. I think Brilliant just took it to him, because the Brilliant was always such an aggressive team, so fundamentally sound, and that's kind of how they beat them last year. And but I think KLC this year, clear cut number one.
Yeah. And I do think there could be, I think Brilliant and New Holstein are the only 2 teams probably. Obviously with COVID, you never know. We could have the same situation we had last year with, having players out, but I don't think they're not unbeatable. Anything can happen. And I think, some teams could have good games. You never know what's going to happen, but they were the easy number 1 pick.
Exactly. And I think, we're going to go to it now. Number 2, we already kind of hinted at Brilliant. I think they're certainly the team to challenge them, and New Holstein, you said as well. I think both of those teams have the play style, like that running game, just take it to them, power running. And I think that style is the way you beat KLC.
Yeah, I agree. And Brilliant since in the last number of years have always been thought to be a running, simple offense, really conservative, not turning the ball over. But I would look to them to, surprise some people this year with their plays. And they do have 2 really good playmakers in Mitchell Kotarovic and Garnet Stabani. They have 2 special running backs, guys who can both catch the ball. And Mason Banky, he's their quarterback. He is second. He is a second returning passer in the conference. So they do have a really good quarterback. Their experience, and I think their best quality is their defense. They had a really good defense last year. It started first game of the year when they only gave up 3 points to New Holstein. Their starting defense did not give up a touchdown on a offensive drive to KLC last year. Obviously, that's not with Robbie Michael, so you can just throw that out. But they can do a little bit of everything, but they will run the ball really, really well. You got Sam Galoff back also. Brilliant's got a lot to look forward to this year.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when you have Banky and Galoff running that option, I think that was really their bread and butter last year, and they're able to just rack up a lot of rushing yards with that team. So, but you mentioned it too. Passing certainly could surprise some teams with that, and I wouldn't be shocked if they had some guys who are up there in passing yards in the conference as well.
Yeah, really one game that they really brought out their passing at the end of the year. Because I remember in that New Holstein game when they won 6-3, first kickoff of the year, Brilliant jumped on a loose kickoff, kind of got in between the second and third line. Nobody really got to it for New Holstein. They jumped on it. They had a short 25-yard field. They had a nice little option play to Kotarovic. They punched in right away. Didn't score the rest of the game. Really, in the beginning of the year, they were not a passing team. Couldn't really pass the ball at all. But as you saw at the end of the year, in the Kiel game sticks out where I believe Mitchell Kotarovic had a nuclear second quarter where he went 160 yards and three receiving touchdowns in one quarter against Kiel there, and they were hitting on all cylinders at the end of the year passing. And look for Mason Banky to be a solid quarterback this year. So, any other notes on Brilliant you see?
No, I think you hit it all. Great defense, great running offense, maybe some passing in there, and then they're just a great fundamentally sound team, and they got a good shot. I mean, I think that game against KLC will be a must-watch game.
And it is a must-watch game. It is week 9, so we are all gifted with hopefully both teams are healthy that week. We can get a rematch. Hopefully Robbie Michael is healthy because that would have been a great game last year against Brilliant. And it was, I think you're obviously just expecting a shootout and who can make more stops late in the game, and pretty much that. So then Brilliant was ranked 3 in the Travis Wilson rankings. They were ranked 3. We both had them at 2.
Yeah.
So next, we both have New Holstein ranked next. And this is where us and the WSN Travis Wilson rankings get a little – they have New Holstein down at 5. I don't – what do you have on New Holstein? I have them at 3. I'm a big New Holstein guy this year.
Yeah, I got them at 3. I mean, they're going to beat you with some good guard pulling action. They're going to run a power sweep. They're going to get to the outside. And when they have a guy like Henry Schnell returning, who was an all conference last year, and they're going to be outrun you. They got some big linemen. They got some good guys coming back like Casper, not Sam Casper, but his brother. But they are going to be a great team, I think, next year as well. And I think they are very, very comparable to Brilliant. I know you mentioned that at the start of the show as well, and I think that's kind of where I'd put them.
Yeah, and last year, one guy I'm really excited to watch this year is Henry Schnell. I did see a little film from their scrimmage. I believe they were playing Hilbert at the time. Henry Schnell looked really good running the ball, and I'm assuming he was their quarterback because I don't know who else they'd have. Last year they did have those like 2 quarterbacks. Schnell would kind of run, and I think Cameron Olsen would pass. Maybe I have those mixed up, but they would do those 2 quarterbacks, and they did it the last 2 years. But I think with Henry Schnell, he threw for a good chunk of yards last year, and I don't know, he's back. If he can run the ball like he has in the past, and you have your strong O-line and strong running. I mean, New Holstein's always had a really good running game. A couple years ago with Caden Judkins, last year with Michael Vols. And Xander Casper, like you said, he's the only first-team O-lineman that's returning in the conference. And then Cody Obler also is another good, solid player for them as well that we can bring up. And, they do have, like every team, they got to replace some depth. They got to replace, but really, New Holstein is really fundamentally sound, and they're not a slow offense. You think, oh, they're running the ball. They scored 50 last year against KLC. Like they did everything they could to win that game, and obviously 2 great players in Michael and Gerdakis just won it for them at the end. But that game, I believe I saw it today. I was looking at that. It was the game of the year in the regular season for the state.
Oh yeah, that game. I remember watching that too.
I couldn't believe it at the end, but it was that. So I also think New Holstein, I don't know which week they do play, but it will be a good game when they play as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think New Holstein, KLC, we can get maybe New Holstein gets a little revenge this year. We'll wait and see, but I think those 3 teams we mentioned right now, I think when they play each other, I think, boy, oh boy, those are must-see games.
So New Holstein, I'm excited to watch them. They'll be a good, solid team. Not really sure why they were ranked so low, but like we said again, tough job that Travis Wilson has to rank every conference in the state of Wisconsin. So next, we're both in agreement. This is the number 2 ranked team on WSN. The Two Rivers Raiders come in at 4 for me, and they're led by Chase Mathias, their sophomore star running back. What do you have on TR?
Yeah, I think, well, you just mentioned the main guy I got, Chase Mathias, as well. I mean, as a freshman, he made the all-conference team as an honorable mention. I mean, they're losing Jaden Kippert, who phenomenal quarterback, who started 3 years there. And so that's going to be something to get used to because I think this TR team, I think we're going to see the most running we've seen out of this team in a long time because they are known for their passing. That's just TR, you immediately think of the pass. You think of the long passing game. It seems like every year they always have a guy up in the leaderboards in the conference in passing yards. So that's always what I think of. And I just think Chase Mathias has a shot to be up in the leaderboards for rushing yards next year.
Oh yeah, I agree. And the only reason I have TR below them is just they were up there with the big dogs last year. They didn't play brilliant because of COVID, so I didn't see that. They only played 6 games, I think, and they didn't play several conference games, so you didn't see the full picture there. But Jaden Kipper was probably their best quarterback, at least in recent history, probably school history for them. I believe he's their leading all-time passing touchdown, probably yards too. That dude was just automatic 3-year starter for them. And beat writers will say from Two Rivers training camp, I guess sophomore Justin Klinkner will be their quarterback. He's got a cannon. He's got a thunderbolt as an arm. Hopefully, we'll see some passing again this year. Like I said, I think this is the first year Two Rivers will be primarily probably more running team, but hopefully we can just see him keep passing as well. Orion Gauger's another guy I have heard good things about. He'll be a wide receiver for them. So, and then another guy, Connor Stanford. He's a standout lineman, second team on both sides of the ball last year. So Two Rivers, you might think, oh, they're losing this guy. They lost Lindbergh. They lost Salta. They lost Kippert. They're going to compete in the conference this year. They're going to be really dynamic. This is probably the number one team I'm really curious to see play, just with a new quarterback. Two Rivers has always been a really solid defense. Two Rivers is probably the team I'm really looking forward to see play. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to assess it. I think there's a lot of question marks with this team. I mean, other than Samford, I'm not really sure about their defense, but I think just to see how their sophomore quarterback plays, I think there's just a lot of question marks with this team, and there's a chance. I mean, they could be up there. There's a chance. I mean, they stay at 5 or 4. We just don't know yet.
Yeah, it will really be good. It'll really be something to watch them play, and just they start out with, I believe, Random Lake? Do they play Random Lake first?
TR, they play Random Lake first.
Play Random Lake first, which we'll get into those matchups later, but I think we'll learn a lot in the first couple weeks too, if TR is going to be a running team, passing team. I'm guessing obviously a lot of both, but we'll probably learn a lot like we will all these teams. All right. So next, we'll jump ahead to my number 5 ranked team. And this team, obviously, they were in the state title game 2 years ago. Last year, they were really unfortunate, I believe. I think they had some COVID issues. They had a lot of guys not playing, starters that should have been playing in several games that they've played. I'm not exactly sure the reasons, but I just remember that being a whole thing. So I don't think they really had an accurate representation of their year last year, especially early on in the year. And I'm thinking, I have Kiel at number 5. And this year, I'm not sure who their quarterback will be. It was Lepisto last year, and he was decent. And they'll have a big running game, I think, this year. I think Daniel Schmitz he's a dark horse to lead the conference in rushing, just because they have 4 starting linemen returning. Daniel Schmitz is a really good running back, up there in yards last year. And anything else on Kiel, that's pretty much really all I have. I think they're going to need to run the ball well this year.
Yeah, I think that's going to be their bread and butter as well. And like you mentioned, Lepisto was certainly a decent option last year. And I think their offense kind of compares very similar to New Holstein in the sense they're going to try to pull guards. They're going to try to get to the outside, and they're going to really run that power sweep action. Might see a little bit of a passing game thrown in there as well, but Kiel's this is probably the lowest they've been in a couple of years too, and I certainly think they have a chance to maybe end up 4th or 3rd in the conference as well, but it might be a stretch at that point.
Yeah, like we were talking about earlier, I think you could almost break it down in kind of tiers. I would probably almost put KLC in a tier by themselves, not saying that they're unbeatable. And then I'd put the Brilliant, New Holstein, Two Rivers, Kiel, probably all in that next tier where they're all just any of those teams can knock off anyone. I mean, they fell how we projected them out, but those next four teams are all really solid. And I think Kiel, they were just 2 years away from being at Camp Randall, so it's not like they're not going to compete this year. They're going to compete. They're going to have a good O-line, good D-line. So I think Daniel Schmitz is a really good running back, and I think he will be a little under the radar, and he'll finish up there with his stats. So anything else on Kiel?
No, I think we got it all. Let's go to number 6.
6. This is a team, and it's Chilton. Chilton's ranked at number 6. They're ranked at number 6 on WSN. I do think Chilton is very under the radar this year. I read up a little bit on them. Their head coach, Michael Arndt, says our team's strength will start with our new faces on both sides of the line. We are a young team, but we have good size up front, and we're going to have good depth. So that's pretty convincing. If you can have good depth and good size in D5 football, D4 football, you're going to be a solid team. You're going to have that nice baseline where you're not thin at positions. You don't have guys out there on islands. But Alex Breckheimer, I believe I'm thinking he's going to be their quarterback. He played in one game last year, but he had 203 yards passing. I don't know exactly why. I'm guessing due to an injury. He only played in one game. Mitchell Schwab, too. Those two guys missed all of last year, but it's said they are expected to be big-time contributors. So I wouldn't be surprised if Chilton can knock off a team like Kiel, New Holstein, Two Rivers, Brilliant. I fully expect them to compete. They returned 14 letter winners with 7 starters back on offense and 4 on defense. So Chilton's a team. They are ranked 6th, so they are down there in our rankings, but I don't think that accurately represents them, and I do think they're a good team.
Yeah, I agree. I think they are a lot better than Valor's, but I don't know where they fit with Kiel, TR, and Holstein. I think they're not as good as those teams. So I think this Chilton team, though, Coach Arndt, he's a very, very crafty coach. He has a lot of good trick plays. I've seen on film. He's gotten some teams on those, and I think when they can return a good chunk of starters, 7-4, that's not bad at all for high school football. I think they certainly have a good chance to make a little ride here and go maybe 3, 4, or 5 in the conference. I don't know about 3, but I think they could mix in there well with Kiel. They're at 5.
Yeah, you never know. One team it's raining, one team is COVID. There's still a lot of obstacles in a 9-game season where you can pick off a team who's maybe struggling or pick off a team when it's just not their night. So I basically think that's pretty much all on Chilton. So now I have Valders. You're going to know the most on Valders. I got Robert Jeffrey and Bryce Schoenberger written down as 2 of their returning guys who are going to lead them. But what do you have on Valders? We all have them ranked 7th.
Yeah, I think this Valders team, I think they're a lot better than Roncalli, but it's a similar theme. They got a lot of turnover. Their offensive line's pretty much brand new. Sophomore quarterback in Trey Schneider. But one guy who really catches my attention here is Bryce Schoenberger on defense. We saw him ended up getting conference honorable mention at linebacker, and he only started, I believe, 4 games there. So that's pretty remarkable. And I think he's certainly their best player on both sides of the ball. And I think they're really going to try to run behind him. I think Robert Jeffrey's a great rusher as well. But this passing game, I think there's a chance, Schneider and Hovey, we might see a little connection there because Cole Hovey, as we know, great basketball player, he's got a pretty good vertical there, so you can almost throw it up to him there. But this team, they got I believe 3 or 4 new coaches. They got like a new offensive line, just a lot of new pieces on this team, and it's high school football, so of course you're gonna have that. So, but this team, I think seven's a great place for them here.
Cole Hovey, he's a guy I'm excited for in the upcoming basketball season. He's one of my favorite players coming into the year. Yeah, he's very athletic, very just a solid guy. So definitely that is an option. Throwing it up to him. So you said he plays wide receiver.
Yep, he's gonna play wide receiver.
Solid, and like they said, they're gonna have a sophomore quarterback. You said projected right now.
Mm-hmm. So that's gonna be interesting. There.
Yeah, it will. There'll be another team to watch early on, and they got stuck with Merrill. I mean, we can go over that more in our next part of the show here, but that's one that I'm guessing Merrill's obviously going to be a deep, solid. They're either D1 or probably D2 team. But I mean, that's very tough. They're very tough first game, and that's at Merrill. So Valders will have their hands full, and look to watch them in week 2 because that's a very tough opponent to go week 1 of the season.
Yeah, I totally agree. Merrill has north of 800 kids, and this Valders team's around 300 kids. I know enrollment doesn't mean everything, but certainly I think them and Howard's Grove week 2. I think this young Vikings team, I think they have a shot. I think they're going to show some glimpses. I think there's a chance they might win. Other than Roncalli, they might pick up that Howard's Grove win, and they might compete a little with Chilton, I think. So we'll have to wait and see there.
Definitely. So then our last place team, this was probably my easiest ranking. Roncalli last, and nothing against Roncalli. It's just I really don't know who they're going to beat. It's just the way it is. The only thing I really have down is Ryan Fisher as their quarterback with a question mark by it. I'm guessing he's going to be their quarterback again. And is Derek Reimer or Braden Reimer the one returning?
Braden Reimer is returning this year, so he's going to be their main running option there. But I don't know who you run behind there. I mean, Trevor Fico, as we know, very great player for Roncalli the past 4 years, but he's gone now. So I don't know who you run behind. I don't know. That team's got a lot of question marks and a lot of places to fill.
Yeah, the Roncalli Jets. I'm not just going to come out and say they're not going to win a game because anything can happen. But I don't know. I just look at this. I know conference award winners coming back. They had Fico last year, as good as he was, but I don't know. I just don't really see who they would beat. They lost to Valders big last year, so I don't know. We really don't have to spend much more time on them. Hopefully they can compete in some games and they can just improve and have a successful season. But pretty much after that, we got, to wrap it up here, we got KLC, Brilliant, New Holstein, TR, Kiel, Chilton, Valders, and the Roncalli Jets, rounding out our top 8 or our conference projected finishers. And next, any other notes you want to add there? I think we covered pretty much all of it, but anything we maybe didn't mention that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I think we got the top 8 teams. I think that's a pretty good list, and I won't be surprised if it ends up like that. So I think good job by Robert and I think Travis Wilson's list might be a little off there with TR being that high, but we'll have to wait and see. And that's the beauty of high school football. So looking forward to it.
Friday Night Lights, they return in this Friday. So top players this year. First 3 were very easy. And obviously, I just wrote down my top 10 guys. They're not really in an order. I tried to put them in an order the best, but obviously there's so many factors that go in. You really can't make an accurate list. So I have Robbie Michael, Colin Gerdakis, and Casey Verhagen as my top 3 players. And basically we already covered it. Those three I think are the top 3 guys. Nothing really else needs to be said. I don't think there's much debate there. I have Sam Galoff at number 4, fullback for Brilliant. He's a linebacker also, really solid defensive and likely to finish as top runner this year. Then I have other guys, Matt Stefani from KLC's at 5. He's their running back, really solid defensive option as well. Henry Schnell from New Holstein, he's their quarterback. I think he's going to throw and run for a lot of yards this year. He's a little, I think, under the radar player as well. Look for him to have a big year. And at 7, I got Chase Mathias from TR. He was their leader on tackles on the defensive end, and he had a breakout rookie or freshman campaign rushing. And I got our last 3 guys. I got Dan Schmitz from Kiel. He'll run the ball. He's a dark horse to finish top. Mason Banky from Brilliant, and then Xander Casper as that first-team all-conference lineman returns. He will have a good year. That's my list. Other guys, Cody Obler. I mentioned Alex Breckheimer before. Bryce Shaneberger from Val. It's hard to tell when you make a list like that, but I think any players that you're calling your shot on right now that are either going to break out or you think players that you're in love with before the season gets underway.
Well, I think one guy who comes to mind for a chance at defense, like just a sleeper here, I think I might be a little biased, but I think Bryce Shaneberger, because I mentioned he only played like 3 or 4 games at outside linebacker, and he managed to still get honorable mention. He racked up a lot of tackles. I think if he's able to get those good counting stats, get tackles for a loss, get some good tackles, get some sacks, I think there's a chance we could see him first team all-conference for outside linebacker. Maybe sneak into the Defensive Player of the Year discussion there. I think him and Obler, I think Matt Stefani as well. I think those 3 guys, I think they certainly are my 3 guys for Defensive Player of the Year. And I don't know about any of the D-line guys. I guess you could maybe include them there, but those 3 linebackers are kind of my guys for Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, I agree. All solid guys who will have a bunch of like you said, Shaneberger, he will rack up a bunch of tackles just because he's probably the best player around him, and the others will probably be on defense a lot. And next, offensively, obviously, I mean, Robbie Michael's going to be the player of the year, barring an injury. It's just the way it is. Gerdakis will be a first-team wide receiver. Verhagen probably should also be up there in a wide receiver. And then, Sam Galoff, Dan Schmitz, as we mentioned. But one guy also I'm going to talk about my hometown team is Mitchell Kotarovic. I think he'll be really under the radar this year. Going back 2 seasons, Cody Brandenburg from Brilliant was a player of the year, scored a whole bunch of touchdowns, averaged over, I believe, 9 yards a carry. Kotarovic will be in that role. He's really fast. I mentioned earlier he caught 3 touchdowns in a quarter, had like 160 receiving yards in a quarter against Kiel last year. Really explosive, really dynamic player. I think if Brilliant runs them loose, they like to run outside. They like to open up the playbook more now. He could be a guy I'm keeping my eye on. He could be a guy finishing with a lot of receiving, also rushing yards, and he's a solid defensive player as well.
Yeah, and we both mentioned our hometown guys for dark horse candidates, but I'm going to mention one of Kotarovic's teammates. I'm going to say Sam Galoff has a shot to dethrone Robbie Michael as Offensive Player of the Year. I don't know if it's likely again, because I think Michael is going to be the clear-cut choice for Offensive Player of the Year, but if anyone's going to do it, I think Gerdakis. I think Sam Galoff. I think Galoff has a shot.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, like you said, I don't think it's likely, just because I don't really see him. I don't see him throwing for less yards. I don't see him throwing for less touchdowns. I mean, he didn't play. He'll probably play in more games this year. So, I mean, Robbie Michael will have a nuclear season. It's going to be really fun to watch. So now, we talked about our top teams. We talked about our top players. Let's just jump into week 1, and this will be the fun part. Talking over some matchups. These are all non-conference games, so we're gonna be talking about some teams that we probably really aren't familiar with or aren't used to seeing on a week-to-week basis. And we'll start off right away. I'll just start off with this one. KLC Ozaki. I believe Ozaki's picked to finish 4th in the Big East. KLC's obviously projected 1. Don't see any. That game is at Ozaki. I don't really see any reason for KLC to drop that one. Two teams that are probably really familiar with each other. They're not that far away. Kohler and Ozaki. So I'm guessing you'll see a lot of offense there. That's anything else from that game?
No, I KLC by a blowout.
Yeah, I would assume running clock. I'm not very sure on Ozaki what they have, but I would just assume running clock. Next game, Roncalli Manitowoc Lutheran. I'm not really sure what Manitowoc Lutheran's going to have this year. We already kind of talked about Roncalli. That's a big rivalry in the parochial schools in Manitowoc. So that one will probably be a pretty good game. I don't think Manitowoc Lutheran's that dynamic of a team. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not sure what to expect from that game. Probably pretty low scoring, or maybe it'll be high scoring as first game of the year. Team they're just getting used to defense, but that game I'm not sure what to think.
Yeah, I think if you're a Jets fan, I think this is your game to win. I think this is the best chance they have to win a game the whole year. It comes 2 days from now, and I think, other than this game, I don't see the Jets being able to scratch out a win.
Yeah, it'll be, they at least won't have jet lag heading across town to Lutheran. So then we got TR at Random Lake. This is a game where I think it'll be really telling about Two Rivers, and I think they will just run away with it as Random Lake's, projected to finish last in the inferior Big East Conference. I'm really excited to see Justin Klinkner. Like I said before, he has a really strong arm. He's a good pitcher in baseball, good athlete. So I think Two Rivers absolutely runs away. It's a good week 1 game for a team that has a lot of new faces in their important positions, and I'm expecting TR big, but that one will be fun to watch on film. Really nothing else from that game. And next game, this one was a big Olympian Conference old rivalry. Brilliant and Hilbert at Hilbert. You have any thoughts on that game?
I think that game, we talked about before. I think Brilliant has a good chance to run away with this game, but I think it's going to be a good game early. I think that Hilbert's going to hang in there, but I think Brilliant will just be able to outlast them.
Yeah, and I think Hilbert projected 3rd in the Big East. Brilliant also projected 3rd in the EWC. But I think it could be a close game, and I think it could be a closer game than people are expecting. It's week 1, so a lot of these teams you might look, this team's projected this team was this last year. I think in the first half of the first game, you're going to have close games. Both teams are coming off a long summer, and they're going to be a little rusty on defense and on offense. There's going to be some kinks to work out. So I think that will be a closer game than people think at half, but I just think I like Brilliant's explosiveness and, just experience. So I do think that one could get out of hand in the second half. Next game, like I said, Chilton's a team I'm really excited to watch. I really do not know anything about Crivets. I know they're a smaller school from up north, so I'm guessing they're, like Bondwells and your Colemans and those type of teams. You're going to try to run the ball, and they're going to establish the run. Maybe not. Maybe Crivets is a passing team, but I don't know. I don't think they had stats in last year. So Chilton, I think they play at home. I don't know. I have no idea what Crivets is. I don't think they're too good where Chilton can't compete, but hopefully Chilton can scratch out a victory here week 1.
Yeah, I don't know much about Chilton. I know much about Chilton. We talked about him, but Crivets, there's not really much we know. I think this is definitely one of the main toss-ups week 1.
Yeah, I like Chilton here. Just we'll pick the conference team, and from what I've heard from coach talk is Chilton is a under-the-radar team. So then 2 teams 2 years ago that were powerhouses. We got Kiel and Kewanee. Like I said, not sure what Kiwani's going to bring to the table. We know what Kiel's going to bring to the table. They're going to try to run the ball. And that game is at Kiel, but I'm not really sure what to expect there.
Yeah, I think Kiel, I don't know if they win this one or not. Kiwani, always tough. They always got a strong offensive line. We'll have to wait and see on this one, too. These last two, very tough.
Yeah, Kiwani, at least Kiel's playing at home. If they had to drive up to Kiwani, that would be a tough, very tough week one. I don't know. I just think that's a tough week one for Kiel. So next game, the old EWC rivals, or maybe not rivals, but foes, New Holstein and Campbellsport. This was, I believe, your game of the did you call game of the week for this one?
For New Holstein Campbellsport, I didn't call games. What?
Or did you say this one could be a game of the week or one you had your eye on?
Oh, for this New Holstein Campbellsport, I think that certainly Campbellsport, I think they match up pretty well, and I think this could go maybe get a little out of hand with New Holstein going far into it. They might get a running clock here, but I think Campbellsport might have a shot here. So just the game I think to look out for.
We should do. I kind of want to do that. Make a game of the week, and we'll go over Valders and Merrill. We can pick the game of the week after. So, like I just said, Valders and Merrill, and we talked about Kiel playing a tough opponent. We talked about, Roncalli having their hands full week one. Valders definitely has their hands full with Merrill. That is a very tough opponent, and it is at Merrill. They have to drive the 2+ hour trip up to Merrill, and that is a very tough, like you said before, Merrill's over 800, Valders around that 300 mark. That's a tough week one. Hopefully Valders just come out of there, work some stuff out, but I'm not sure how Merrill is. Who knows? They could be a bottom team up in that conference, but that is a very tough opponent to draw week one.
Yeah, and Merrill actually finished second last in their conference last year, but again, they played in the conference where the schools had around 700, 800 kids, so it's like, I mean, I don't know how this is going to really go for Valders, and the connection there, I mean, they're supposed to play Franklin varsity reserve, it says, and that game got canceled. And then what happened is Valders actually has a connection with Merrill because a person who used to work at Valders now works at Merrill, coaches football there. So they were like, hey, let's get this game together. So that's how this game came to be. And now I don't know how this is going to work out for the Vikings. So we wish them the best, but this might be a tough week one matchup.
Yeah, definitely. And, I mean, they're going to find out real quick what they got to work on and what they – hopefully, though, who knows? You could go up there week one, Merrill maybe overlooking the Vikings, and early on, like I said, expect a close game as both teams are trying to work out their weaknesses. So, like I said, let's do it. Every week, let's have a game of the week where I'll try to post and try to feature your top players. And then I'll also have the other games, but we'll stress that game as the game of the week. So what are you thinking? We got a lot of games here.
So I know I mentioned New Holstein Campbellsport, but I'm not going to pick them as this. That's not as fun. I'm going to pick – I think I'm going to go Kewanee and Kiel. I think we don't know how these two teams this game will go. I think – I picked that one first. I picked Rockeye Manitowoc Lutheran, but I think for the sake of just I take Kewanee and Kiel as the game of the week.
Yeah, that was exactly my pick. I also did look at Rockeye Manitowoc Lutheran just because that would have been a fun one to kind of inner city squad or inner city battle. But no, I definitely think Kewanee, the level of football will be a little higher in that game. So, yeah, I agree. That's our game of the week. At Kiel, I expect Daniel Schmitz in their running game to really, really try to get established in week one, and we'll see where it goes from there. So any other notes, any other things you want to go over before we wrap it up here?
I think we got it all. I'm looking forward to this first week of non-con games. Really lets us see like what's going on with these teams. We can kind of like this first week's always big. We just get to see what teams are going to show us this year, and we'll talk about it maybe next week, maybe the week after. Like you said, I don't know how many of these we want to do, but certainly fun.
No, yeah, hopefully we can get some guests on here. Like I said, anyone listening, any players who want to come on the show, talk about their team, talk about what they're going through, just be on the show. I'll invite anyone on, who's playing and stuff like that. So hopefully we can get some interviews coming up here with some people, talk about their seasons, how they're going, and we can do that. But I think that was a pretty successful episode 1. I think in the future, obviously the game, once we get into, the conference schedule, we can really get into breaking down some big games, what teams got to do, what they got to do to win, and keys for the matchup as we can break down, stats and etc. But no, I say that was a pretty successful first podcast, and hopefully we will have several more for the EWC listening community. And all right, Drew, thanks for coming on today. This will conclude our first podcast of the season.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for having me on, Robert. Just want to talk about a little bit about my podcast I have with Jordon Lawrenz. As you know, you were on it before. Jordan Drew the Sports Crew. Every Monday we have episodes. We talk high school, college, professional sports, so all that good stuff. We have some trivia. We talk about on the state in sports history, and we also have we have some fun episodes. We have done an EWC basketball preview. We've talked some other sports, and just check us out. I'm Jordan Drew the Sports Crew on Spotify, anywhere you listen to a podcast, and then on Instagram also you can give us a follow, Jordan Drew _Sports Crew, and it's JORDON, not AN. I know it's weird, but thank you, Robert. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. And I like that. We'll hopefully, maybe I'll open up a Instagram comments or open questions on what we want us to go over. I like the trivia idea. I was thinking about it today, just couldn't really find enough stuff, and it's kind of tough with 2 people. So definitely, hopefully we can find some new stuff to talk about, and we'll see you in the next episode.